clock, we'll go ahead and get this facilities planning committee rolling. Items for discussion. Middle school motto, and we'll let Dr. Edgar lead the discussion.
Okay, well, good afternoon. Thank you guys for coming this afternoon. I don't anticipate this meeting will take a great amount of time. I do believe that the meeting on the 22nd will probably need to spend a little bit more time. But today, what we're looking for is some direction on avenues to take as far as middle school. Just to kind of recap what happened, we talked about some things the last facilities meeting, and the Board of Education met after that and did put an action item in place that stated they would like to see the middle school path, then they would like to see boundaries for the elementary path, and then they would like to see what we would like to see from a high school path. And that was voted on 6-1, and so that's kind of what we were directed to do as an administrative team. So we kind of went back to the drawing board, and today we're going to provide you with 3 scenarios that we feel are viable options for a middle school model. And then what we'll do on the 22nd is we'll provide boundary changes, feeder patterns, and elementary models, a model for you that will meet the middle school path that you choose today. So we'll just start with the scenarios. That was the attachment that was provided. Just so you know, what we'll do administratively is after the meeting today, we have a meeting already scheduled for Friday of this week. We'll go in and start putting all that stuff together. Thanks to Jake, Kelly, and his team. They are providing the coding for us, so we're not having to use DLR right now. Even Jake had to do some things, and so we're putting everybody to work. But we're pretty confident that we can come up with a plan internally to help us move forward. Now, one thing that I will tell you is that as we move forward, when we start talking about building closures or building repurposes, right-sizing the school district, those types of things, then we have a policy that we did not abide by the last time around with Mark Twain, Policy FC. We've looked at that twice administratively, so we will follow that policy and bring back that'll be the structure that we'll use in order to tell you why this is the building we feel like you should choose over this building or whatever. So, in scenario number 1, we have a middle school model. We have 6-8. What it does, it supports a consistent SJSD middle school model. Projected enrollment exceeds optimal capacity. And what we're using on the capacity is 775 students per cohort. That does not mean, that's just an average. So we might have 813 in some cohorts. We might have 690 in some cohorts. So we're using the number 775. Expansion costs to support increased enrollment and increased elective opportunities for 6th grade students, and then the teaming, that'll be a staffing increase. So what we feel on scenario number 1 is that I think it was pretty obvious that last time around we talked about a 6-8 model, and there would be buildings, current facilities that we have that would have to be added on to. And I think we took from that meeting that we felt like that probably wasn't anything that was in the best interest of the school district at this time. So I don't even feel like scenario 1 is something we need to talk about unless you guys want to talk about it. We wanted to put on there because that is something that was brought up in Vision Forward was the 6-8 model. We just wanted to make sure that we're respectful of the process. We just don't feel like it's in the best interest of where we're heading as a district right now. We do feel we need something consistent. But with the current facilities that we have, we don't feel like this is the best 6-8 model. We'll talk a little bit about 6-8 model again in scenario number 3 as well. So does anybody want to talk about scenario 1? Okay, good. So we can scratch scenario 1. That's less work for us. That's good. Okay, so scenario 2 is a 4 middle school model. That's the 7-8. I know last time that they presented some information that we could possibly do a 3 middle school model. Whenever we went back and ran the numbers, those numbers proved to be false, and so we would have to go with a 4 middle school model unless we added on to the current facilities. once again, we talked about not adding on to current facilities. So we would use existing facilities. There would be boundary changes. We'll balance the enrollment in the middle schools, which is a good thing because, you know, right now we have a discrepancy. These balanced enrollments would be somewhere between 425 and 450 students. And right now in some buildings we have over 500 and other buildings we have less than 400.
You're talking about just the middle schools?
Just the middle schools, yes. Feeder pattern from elementary to middle. This would allow us to have 3 elementary schools that would feed into 1 middle school. So with that being said, optimizing building capacities, ability to repurpose or closure of 1 elementary site. We really thought maybe it would be more than 1 elementary site, but when you push the 6th grade back into the elementaries, it really does make us tight. One thing that's we're struggling with is our biggest cohorts right now are in the grades where we don't need them to be to do something like this. But you have to deal with it.
So you said 3 elementary schools.
3 elementary schools would feed into each middle school.
So there'd be 12 elementary.
12 elementaries. Right now we have 13. We did have 14. We have 13 right now. And so what this model would do is if you want to see what this looks like, you would advise us to go back, bring you feeder patterns to each one of those middle schools, and talk about right sizing it that way with the repurpose or a closure of 1 elementary building. I was really hoping we could get 2 out of it, but I don't think there's any way possible. And we're using optimal capacity. We're not using maximum capacity. We feel that's not in the best interest of student learning right now is to maximize any building. So we are using optimal capacity.
You said repurpose instead of close. Is there a possibility that one of those schools could be used for something else?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, we have expanded our early learning in Mark Twain this year. We probably have room for 1 more expansion in early learning. There are other areas. We have some real challenges, I think, with our Pear Street facilities right now, with our warehouse, our 1009th Street with our maintenance department. We'd really like to get some of that stuff moved. So I don't know exactly what that looks like, but if you tell us to provide you with what those feeder patterns look like, then we can talk about the buildings. And like I said, it won't be 1 building. You know, that might be 3, might be 5, might be 7, but we'll tell you why we feel like one of them's better than the other. And provide that through meaningful data that has been provided in the past. What do you guys think about scenario 2? You want to see scenario 2?
I would like to see it.
Okay.
Seems to be the least expensive.
It definitely is the least expensive, I will tell you that.
You know, it would have been nice to get to 3 middle schools and make it tidy, but I do think there's value in having 4 without overcrowding that age group, because it seems like that is where we have a lot of discipline issues and also where students seem to get further behind. So I think that just naturally by having smaller environments, I think it'd be beneficial.
Hey Gabe, not to get sidetracked, but what was the error that was discovered to maintain 4 middle schools from
I think
3?
that would have to be the,
I think it was the numbers that they used were different than what the actual numbers were.
And projections too?
Projections, yeah, the
Okay.
projections were off, and sometimes if you see those decline in enrollments, I mean, we actually, this year, we did not decline at all. I think we actually went up 13 students. Where's Robert at? Robert? Yeah. Didn't we go up like 13 students this last year? Our enrollment balanced out, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty much flat.
So we had
lost
jumped
that
from,
decline.
we lost 3 years ago, let's say we lost 350.
Yeah.
Well, they're using
Stop
that.
that trend.
Yes.
Okay.
And we were using that as an average, so it's kind of scary to. So what we did is Jake, if you want to talk about how you come up with those numbers, you just went to K-6 population last year, right?
Yeah, we used the 22-23 school year actual students we had that were reported to the state K through 6. And that's where just under 5,500, so 5,449 is where we were.
And so to Kevin, to answer your question, DLR was using that number minus a
Yeah.
Okay.
projected decline. Okay, so we'll come back with data for scenario 2. That'll be provided to you on the 22nd. Okay, scenario 3, it supports a consistent SJSD middle school model, new middle school along with utilization of 2 existing middle schools. The build cost, I did talk to McCown Gordon. I also talked to DLR today, and the build cost on an 800 student middle school is approximately $54 million. And obviously that's approximate. The repurpose of 2 middle schools into elementaries. You right-size the district with elementary building closures up to 3 and 4. Staffing, optimization, and organization efficiencies to decrease operational costs. So, I think it's pretty obvious that I've said in every one of these meetings that I feel like the staffing is going to be the biggest challenge that we have. So I would support scenario 3. I know that it throws a lot of different wrinkles into the puzzle. But one thing you need to know about that, if you do spend into your no tax increase dollars that you have on a middle school, then that's going to prolong anything for a new high school in the future, because you're taking away from that. So if you spend $54 million of the $76 million that you have available, it's going to take you 2.5 years to build that back up to get to where you need to be. So with that being said, I want everybody to understand with scenario 2, okay, if that's something that we want to see, that very well could be not a permanent fix. I don't want to sit here and tell you that number 2 is a permanent fix. And I say that because I'm not wanting to send a message that that's what we're saying. Because if you choose to become a 2 high school system someday, then that obviously creates an opening for another middle school, where you could even be a 2 middle school if you build one in scenario 3. So there's a lot of different options there that you're going to have in the future if that's the direction that we choose to go. But I still think that we have to make something happen, and we have to make something happen now. So on scenario 3, it becomes a lot more complicated, but administratively we can provide information on scenario 3. We don't want to waste our time, because it is going to be very time consuming, because there'll be a lot of different scenarios, because you're talking about repurposing or closing down 2 middle schools. So if you repurpose them to elementaries, then which 2 need to be repurposed to elementaries in the parts of the town? Where can you close down the most elementaries? And I don't know. So you're really talking about optimizing efficiency, but I don't know that that's the number 1 priority right now. But I will tell you that as we get into 25 and get into 26 and get into 27, staffing is going to become harder and harder and harder. So,
I would like to see data. We talk about optimization, and from a logistical standpoint, it all makes sense. Fewer buildings. But I've said this before, students are not widgets.
all right?
Do we really save when we create a larger environment versus the extra resources we have to put in that larger environment to make it as efficient and to have student success where we want it to be? And I
Not at this level.
and
Not as much at this level as you would at the high school level.
so I hate to just use the optimization savings and not factor in.
Yeah.
If we take our Pershings and Gene Fields and Ellisons and those smaller schools and now they're twice the size,
Yeah.
we're making a major assumption that size is not going to affect student performance. And I think that's dangerous to go making that assumption without having data for that. I don't know exactly what the data is, but I think it's too big of an assumption to make.
Well, I just pulled some bills, and I just had Mickey pull them randomly. We just picked them. These are just schools that I chose: Bodie, Hyde, Lindbergh, and Skaith. Okay, those are just 4 buildings that we chose. And from an operational standpoint, which is your Evergy electric costs and your Missouri American Water, we spent $210,000. No, that's not right. What was the total, Mickey, do you know? Is Mickey here? Casey? I thought he had a total, but I guess it didn't print off. But it wasn't near as much as I thought it was going to be. So,
It's not the
Did you factor
staffing.
yeah, the staffing is where you're gonna save your money, but the problem is, some of those staffing are gonna have to follow kids, and we talked about this, and it's more resources than it is certified staff, because certified staff, you're probably gonna need most of your certified staff, so you will save on some resources.
Are you saying support staff would increase with the larger?
Performance, attendance. I mean, if you take the data that we have available, if you take, let's say, Carden Park or, let's say, Hosea, for example, and compare their attendance, even pre-COVID, to, I mean, we should be doing this officially. I've done it kind of with the numbers I have. But how does that attendance, pre-COVID, at Hosea, compare to when it was Hyde, Hosea, and Lake Contrary? So if our attendance rates go, and we're funded based on attendance, how much real savings is there in the long run? Are we saving pennies and losing dollars at the same time?
But I think that's also where we have to be cognizant of what schools are repurposed. Because it's no secret that when you close Lake, and now kids from clear out that used to have a community-based school now have to go all the way across the south end to go to school. If they miss the bus, they're not going. They don't have a way to get there. And same thing with Humboldt and Lindbergh, where Betsy Ellison parents, that's in a desert, that's an island, nobody lives out there.
And that's the data that I think we need to have, as opposed to looking at a utilities expense sheet and some simple expenses like that.
Well, we could show you that, and that's the program that Jake has, and his people can put it, we'll put it up on the screen on the 22nd, you can move everything around.
Well, but that's also probably a conversation. I think sometimes this committee gets so far into all the other committees, like the academics committee probably needs to be able to weigh in on who's performing what and what needs to be where. And if we're really looking at facilities, then we're gonna say, this is the oldest, crappiest building, or this is the,
Well, I think that's all that's what we're here for. That's all I can provide to you. They were all scored in 2019. You guys saw all that information. We'll put all that stuff. We know what their, but as far as their performance is concerned, I say this to the administrative team all the time. It'd be hard for me to say it's okay to close Bessie Ellison because they're one of our higher performing schools, right? So if I go in public and somebody says, why are you closing Bessie Ellison? Isn't it one of your highest performing schools? And I say yes, right? Okay, so that makes it a harder argument for me to say. I'm just using that as an example. So, but it is what it is. Nothing's going to be popular, and that's okay. But all we can do is provide the factual information, and the Board of Education can choose to do what they want with it.
I believe we need to, of course, invest and upgrade, but scenario 3, to spend that kind of money without having an overall plan, I just don't think it's responsible. I do think scenario 2 is the best scenario here, and I do agree that it is not a long-term scenario.
So then why are we making it?
What's that?
Why are we making it then?
Because we got to get the 7th and 8th.
It's gonna be incremental change, but because we don't know 5 years from now what.
And here's what I'm gonna say. I do not care at all about 2-school, 3-school. I do not care, okay? But my point is, if we keep making short-term decisions off let's just try to make it a little bit better, but we're not really doing a whole lot here, then let's make that plan. Let's say this is where.
This is part of the bigger plan.
Right, and that's my thing is
one of the things that I see in scenario 2, albeit it may look like a small step, it addresses boundaries, which is, in my mind, one of the most huge things that we have never addressed for a lot of years and has been part of the reason we've gotten to where we are. So even if from a true facility standpoint, it is a small thing, I think the impact of it and the go-forward opportunity is big. I think it gives us maybe a stronger base to start with, to have some of the discussions to say, how do we become better and the best that we can be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, but until we do some of that stuff.
And I guess that's what I'm kind of hoping for is if we're gonna make decisions that are gonna be like, okay, but this is only gonna get us to the next couple years. Well, the way our district and community have typically worked is the next step never comes.
Yeah.
But the next step has never been laid out, explained,
Yeah.
shown to the public why it's better. And it's also never been really a great one sometimes. It's been, the facilities we talk about, if you go back to the PACT group, the facilities has always been the scapegoat of everything else that's wrong in the district. And the original PACT started on issues of the district, and I was there when we met at Eagle Radio and then Old 36 Food and Drink, and it turned into a facilities for, honestly, it kind of bought time. While the PACT went through, it bought 2 years for the same poor decisions to continue. And what I'd like to lay out, I think it's a bigger deal. If you balance these middle schools, it's a much bigger deal, a much bigger step than people think about. And I would, if we could make a motion, I'd make one, but I would challenge administration and challenge the board. These middle schools should be balanced socioeconomically instead of segregated socioeconomically, which they have been in the past.
Yeah,
So, I mean, it can be done that they should be within a certain percentage free and reduced lunch at each school. And don't tell me we can't do it because it just takes a pencil.
We can do it.
Well,
The state of Missouri has said, you guys are doing that, right?
But and just what Jeff said is exactly, we agree on it. We don't see the future, and I think community at large focuses more on high schools, and I would not be in favor of building a new middle school when it's gonna come back to, but what about the high school? And I know that's how the town thinks. So this is, I think, a good step on the 7-8, that second scenario. Let's get the boundaries, let's get the right sizing. It's not as radical as probably what I would like to see, but it's a step in the right direction. And we're moving strategically along, whether it be the 2 high school, build 2 new high schools, we're moving.
Well,
As opposed to just
I
sitting
think that's
still.
what scenario 2 is gonna provide for you. It's gonna provide a platform, right? And it's gonna make us move something forward. And then we can go have the fight on the 2 high school versus 3
after you
and-
retire, right?
after I retire. And no, but
After my term is over.
no, but seriously, I mean, that needs to be the next discussion. But let's get this out of the way, and then we'll have that discussion. And wherever it takes us, it takes us. And we can create a plan, a long-term plan, as you say, whether it's 2 high schools or 3 high schools, or whether it's a new high school and a repurposed high school, whether it's 2 new high schools, whether it's the same 3 high schools we have with renovations. Doesn't make any difference to us. But we have this, okay? We have a defined platform from pre-K-8, and I think that, if you don't want to build a new middle school, then let us do that.
Got a question
I
right
have a
here.
question.
Yeah.
Being I spent over 20 years in a middle school, I would also have to say, I can't imagine having 800 middle school kids.
Well, I just priced it at that, and
That would be hopping. I mean, nuts.
they just built one.
I mean.
I asked him, and they built
They
a
like feed off one another and go in little groups and,
They built a 650, an 800, and a 1200. They built a 1200 at East Summit,
God help
just
them.
now.
Well,
Yeah.
from Wendy's point of view too, we can't let good be the enemy of perfect.
Yeah.
We gotta make a step. We gotta push that.
And my only concern is, what I don't wanna see happen is that we make decisions, so I have a kindergartner. What I worry about is if say I had a first grader at Mark Twain, so now Mark Twain's gonna go to Edison, and then we make a decision that, oh, now you're in 5th grade, now you're gonna go over here, you know what I'm saying? Like, I guess my concern is, I just don't want us to move kids and families multiple times over this. So whatever, I'm a fan of movement, so that's
Boundaries are
fine.
never permanent though. I mean, they're just not.
Right, but I'm
It all
just saying, if we
depends
say,
on-
oh,
Yeah.
hey, sorry, we closed Mark Twain, and now we're closing Edison. It's like,
Right.
My thought is, it's to balance it out and do it morally and ethically right is a bigger step than anybody in here is giving. And Can you imagine going to the voters and asking for something when every one of the areas of town is being treated the same? Everybody's child is in an environment that is fair? I think it's underestimated, and some people are gonna have to, hey, it might be bad for their business, or, you know, there's gonna be some more poor people in our school, and nobody wants to hear that, but that's what it is. Because poor people vote too. And we found that out in our last bonds and our last our school board elections, and a vote is a vote. And if those people have something and see, you know what, they're doing something good here too. Boy, I think that's powerful.
In scenario 2, would that somewhat kind of affect some of the high school enrollment too, if we kind of readjust what 3 are going? I mean, because that's going to kind of mess with middle school.
It will if you vote to get rid of open enrollment.
Well, but they'll generally follow their friends, generally.
Most follow, and I've been in this fight for a long time, most will go with where their friends go.
Right.
Most go with where their buses go, most go with who comes in the elementary. You'll have a few here or there, but most go with where their friends go. And that's,
in all honesty, it just kind of depends on the elementary boundaries.
It does, absolutely.
yeah, it's more,
It heavily depend on that.
How does 4 middle schools feed into our 3 high school system? How does that, so which middle school gets split, and half the kids have to go one high school and one have to go other, especially if we have strict boundary rules and stuff?
Well, you would still have your south end would feed into Benton, and your north Rubidoux would feed into Lafayette.
And so the 2 other middle schools would go straight to
So
central?
6 elementaries would feed into 2 middle schools into Central.
but instead of having.
That's currently the way it has set up.
But instead of having 300 kids at Rubidoux, 7th and 8th, you would have possibly 450.
Right.
In that situation.
Yeah, and I think that's the one that was small, right? Dr. Gilpin, it was 3, what was Rubidoux, 380? They're under 400 now. And so we're trying to balance them all. We're not gonna have them all at 425, we can't do that, but they're all gonna be close.
No, but if somebody wants to come into this town, they can purchase a home in different areas of town. We all know it's messed up, and we can make better decisions and fix it. And we need to, I use the word segregation because it upsets people, but it's exactly what's happened. We can stop it. And I think whatever we do, if we do what's morally and ethically right, and we are arguing people that don't like it on the side that is right, we're gonna be fine.
Any other questions, comments from anyone who may or may not have a chance?
So your question was, do we want to see scenarios? Did we answer that?
Yeah, no, not really.
I don't know that there's any will from the committee to build a new middle school, to be honest.
Yeah.
Can you do that 3 middle schools without building a new middle school then?
We cannot. We cannot.
And why is that?
You could add on to current facilities, but I just don't know that that's in your best interest.
And what would the program equity look like from 3 middle schools? 1 being new, 2 being old? Would it match up as far as the programs that could be offered? I mean, pretty much the same?
Yeah, yes. I'll let Dr. Gilpin speak to that. Dr. McGinnis, but I don't see that that's an issue, right?
At middle school?
Yeah,
No, they're the same now.
Okay.
and I think we would make sure that they did the same.
It's high schools that don't offer the same courses across the board.
Yeah.
So we want a more in-depth look at scenario 2 and 3, or just 2?
Just
2.
Any other questions or comments?
David, I need a clarification. Gabe, just want to make sure I understand. So essentially, we decided we wanted to break ground on something tomorrow. There's $76 million available to do that, and $54 million is the price for the 800-person middle school.
Yeah.
Is that $76 million, and again, not talking to a finance guy, does that continue to age may not be the right term, but appreciate over time? Obviously, I'm sure that depends on the market, things of that nature as well.
It grows. I think it was in the 30s when I first got here, and so now it's double.
It's growing because we paid off.
We make
debt.
prepayments on your debt and those types of things, and so we're in a good position right now to make
If our
that.
assessed valuation would go up more, it would go up more.
Yeah, we need to talk to the assessor. But yes, we're in a good spot. And so if you don't take away from that, then it obviously builds your bonding capacity and get you where you want to go.
I got one last question. The teaming in scenario 2, how much of a, maybe you stated it and I missed it, but how much of an increase, is that a significant increase as far as the amount we spend is concerned?
I don't think it would be any increase because we're trying to do it right now, right? So it'd be very similar to the same cost. Now, it would be an increase if you did a 6A teaming model.
Yeah.
But this is a 7A teaming model, and that's what we're trying to mirror right now, or we did in 22-23.
And in scenario 3, we wouldn't have a teaming model?
You would have a team.
You would, and you could have a 6A or a 7A, just depends on how big you wanted the middle school to be.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
If we went with scenario 2, what would be the timing? This fall?
Yep, next fall.
Next fall.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yep. So what we would do is provide you with this, and then I'm sure we'll have to negotiate the boundaries some and move some things around, but you could probably, the board could probably take a vote now. I was saying Christmas, now, if you choose that avenue, I think you could be done in October. And I think the quicker you get it done, the better off it's going to be for everybody's. This is not a decision you want to make in April and tell them that they're turnaround, they're going to have to do something else. It gives them time to let it soak in, and there's always going to be people that are unhappy, but I think as long as you remember that you're doing it for what's best for kids at the end of the day, then you look yourself in the mirror and move on, right?
Item 2, feeder patterns.
So that's what we'll do then. So I was just going to kind of talk about specifically what you'll see, but we'll go back on Friday of this week and we'll start working on feeder patterns and send that information out to the Board of Education, to the Facilities Committee. Everybody will have it for the 22nd. So, and that's what we'll discuss on the 22nd.
When you discuss,
and then we'll probably put it on the board agenda as an information item only, to discuss as an information item only on the 28th, just so publicly they can start having that discussion.
At what point do you think FC would come?
FC will work on, I have provided that to the administrators, and FC will be part of our discussion on Friday of this week.
Of where you'll put that into?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah. That'll be how we'll make the decision, or how we'll make the recommended decision on a repurpose or a closure. We'll use FC to make that recommendation.
And the caveat on these boundaries is one elementary is going away.
Yes.
Okay.
So, later.
when we talk about scenario 2, when we take a more in-depth look, will we also talk about maybe a second or third phase where it could come after that as far as facilities before we vote on it?
Yeah, I think you need to have the next phase in place, and that next phase is obviously going to be what you want your high school model to look like.
Okay.
Hey,
Yeah.
just to be clarified, I know you mentioned about the Bessie Allison being a high-performance school. Well, that and Gene Field are in 30% free and reduced lunch category. I mean, I think that has more to do with it, especially with the poverty discrimination we provide in this town as well. I think you were trying to mention. But those being the highest, least free and reduced lunch compared to the title schools is why it's high performance, I feel.
I would agree that plays into it. But, I can't.
All those kids
right
go to
now,
school
that's where they
fed.
go, and that's what they perform, and that's all I can speak to.
All those kids go to school fed.
Kids are kids to me.
I'd just like to add, whenever, as we start talking about different scenarios, and of course, middle school and high school, we need to do a better job of saying why. Because we need to show the community how this benefits. And we have not done a good job of that in the past. Really, 2, 3 high schools, 4 whatever, there needs to be education, there needs to be learning, there needs to be data, there needs to be vetting of the data. I mean, we need to look at stuff, like when they assessed the buildings and they gave everyone a score, some of those scores are pretty on, but some of those need to be adjusted a little bit based on, okay, one didn't have security lighting. Okay, a school took a big hit on a low dollar fix, which has since been fixed. So I just think that as we move forward, we really need to, if we want the community to get on board, we need to stop telling the community what we need to do and start asking and showing what's going to be better. So.
What FC score?
Yep.
Good discussion. I think this is the shortest facilities meeting we've ever had. And the time is now 2:36. At this point, we'll call this meeting adjourned.
Good job, Mr. Fox. Way to plan that thing out.